What's going on, you rascals? Thanks for tuning on in. Tobin here with you. Appreciate you guys checking out the channel. If you like the Tobin and Leroy radio show, which we do on our new home WQAM from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., you guys can bask in the silly saws every day on Twitch, twitch.tv/Miami560WQAM. Get the clips on WQAM on YouTube. I'll put the link right there in the description. You guys can go check that on out. So, some Miami Heat trade fodder. Let's call it fodder. I don't want to call it a rumor. Let's call it trade fodder. You know, it's more, this is out there in the internet, and if it's in the air in the internet, I'm going to talk about it as if it's worthy of 10 minutes of content. So there was an NBA executive who spoke to theheavy.com, Sean Devaney, I believe it was, and discussed the Miami Heat possibly having a trade interest in a bigger name, especially a couple of years ago, and that was that he thinks that the Heat would be tied. There's some possibilities for the Heat going after a Julius Randle. And Julius Randle, interesting with the New York Knicks, had an amazing year a couple of years ago, 24 points a game. Knicks were very decent off of the bubble season, and were one of those teams that was kind of riding high, and he had this outlandish year from three, and got a monster deal from the New York Knicks. And then last year, definitely dropped off. His shooting came back to earth, and he seemed miserable all year with the New York Knicks. There was a lot of unhappiness with the fans. There was a lot of thought that he was going to try and force his way out. It never happened, and that doesn't appear to be going away anytime soon. The Knicks certainly feel like, they're always around some big rumors, but they never get anybody. They got Jalen Brunson this year, but a lot of people thought they were going to get Donovan Mitchell. They have a heap of draft picks, and is he going to be part of that? But essentially, this guy says to Sean Devaney, says Miami's probably probably the big team that will be looking for a power forward, and he would at least be interesting there with Bam and Jimmy Butler. First of all, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if he would be interesting next to Bam and Jimmy Butler. I think that I get the idea of his scoring prowess. He's averaging over 20 points a game. It would seem to be a natural fit. He's certainly not shy about shooting the three. I'm a little bit worried about his ability to shoot the three. I think that was, like you said, that breakout year that he had where he got his contract was a bit of an outlier in his career. It was an elite season for him. But he's certainly not shy about it. I mean, he's definitely had that responsibility of being a guy who carried a team and did some decent stuff, had a good year. I have a little bit of prickliness towards Julius Randle just because of that whole Brandon Tierney saying Chris Bosh has never been peak Julius Randle, which is a ridiculous thing to say. So definitely had to dump on Julius Randle a little bit. That's just Heat Knicks business, baby. I don't know what to tell you. It's nothing personal, Julius. It's just what it comes down to. But I don't know how much I love the fit there with bringing Julius Randle in next to Bam and Jimmy Butler. And I just feel like that position, here's what I think about it. First of all, what are they trading in that scenario? I'm guessing, is this like a Duncan Robinson for Julius Randle type of deal, like two contracts that neither side is that thrilled with, and maybe they don't get the most out of, and maybe there's a pick involved there or something like that, because Julius Randle's owed a lot of money, like over $90 million left on his contract. And I just think that the Heat, looking at getting a Julius Randle, while maybe it slightly improves you, I feel like maybe it's like a ground rule double. I feel like the Heat are saving their moves for a home run cut. I think it's like they're saving it for KD's upset, Bradley Beal's upset, something to that regard. I don't think it comes down to a Julius Randle is the move they're going to make. I also do think that they, while I know everybody's concerned with the Heat starting lineup and who that big is next to Bam, and they feel like Bam would be better suited as a power. First of all, Bam's a center. I get it. Everybody just doesn't want to accept that, but the guy has been a center on two teams that got to the Eastern Conference Finals, was the best player in an Eastern Conference Finals 3 years ago. And, had some big performances in the playoffs last year. I get people wanted the consistency to be a little bit more in some of those Celtics games, but I don't know if they're just going to say we need to do this because Bam's out of position. I think we're starting to see a lot of the greatness out of Bam and the aggression that he has, especially over these last 5-6 games. The guy really does feel like he is super engaged. I also think that they're really liking how Caleb Martin is doing. I actually asked about Bam about this after the win over the Suns, and here's what he had to say about how Caleb is fitting into that starting lineup.
So much was made about how Caleb was going to fit in that starting lineup, the impact that he had tonight, and how are you seeing him grow throughout the season?
He's figuring it out. I mean, 5 for 6 from 3. Like he's getting to his spots. He's doing it on the defensive end. He's taking those challenges and on both ends. And we want Caleb to be aggressive. We want Caleb to shoot all the threes that he shoot because it makes us better at the end of the day.
I just think it's also too big. If you were to tell me that this was the last year of Julius Randle's contract, or you're bringing him in for, you're getting rid of some long-term money and you're bringing in a shorter-term deal, it'll free some stuff. I'd hear it out more, but, I just think that you have shooting on this team, and I think that the important thing with Bam and Jimmy is to surround them with elite shooting. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think Julius Randle is that. I think that he is a willing shooter. I don't know if he's the kind of capable shooter that you'd want to bring in. Certainly, look, he can have some ability to fill it up. But I really just feel like that all-star year that he has is his peak more of an outlier than it is to the guy. I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if he's the fit that people think that he would be. I think people think it's a seamless fit. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I don't know if I'm in love with that move. But I get it. The Heat, you saw that third quarter against the Suns, and you see the Heat get, giving up offensive rebound. I think they gave up 14 rebounds combined to Torrey Craig and DeAndre Ayton. It was a very frustrating thing to see. But you also saw the ability of Caleb Martin. First of all, one of his best shooting performances of the season. You also saw, how dynamic he could be in getting turnovers and causing havoc and getting this team out on the fast break, which is honestly where I think that, we all see that's when they're at their best. They get stops, they turn the ball over, they can go and make things happen. But this is going to be an interesting trip. I think that people's opinion could flip because we're talking about a road trip that's going to include the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's a road trip that includes the Minnesota Timberwolves. These are big teams, very big teams. Cleveland's one of the biggest teams in the league. And Minnesota, of course, making that Twin Towers move at the start of the year. And Minnesota always kicks the Heat's ass, like always. Especially since the Jimmy Butler trade. It's like a sacrifice to the basketball gods, even though there was a team in between there. Jimmy Butler on the Miami Heat doesn't beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. Doesn't matter if it's regular season or preseason. The Timberwolves seem to have the Heat's number in a big, big way. But this is going to be a fascinating one. It'll be a little bit interesting against Toronto because they are very, very banged up right now. But Toronto's more weirdly long than they are, I would say, bulky big as far as the team's concerned. And then they get the news today or yesterday that Heat announced that Omer Yurtseven went under the knife. Had successful surgery on his ankle for some bone spurs, but he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And I certainly think that was a plan to see what Omer could do. And people may scoff at that, but did you guys think that Max Strus was going to do what he did last year? Did you think Gabe Vincent was going to do what he did last year? Did you think that Duncan Robinson, when they started him 3 years ago, was going to do what he did? No, I trust the Heat when they say or think that a guy was going to bring them a lot of production. But for right now, that's a blow to them. Tyler Hero also didn't go at the initial start of this road trip. He did not travel to Toronto with the team. Victor Oladipo did, so that's an interesting thing. Now, this Vic situation is interesting because he's not playing, but he is warming up before every game as if he is going to play. So he's not losing that game day routine. I don't know if that's a mental thing for him for when he is cleared. He just wants to be in his game day routine, or if this is genuinely a sign that he is getting closer. But I'd say Victor Oladipo's been warming up before every Heat game that I've been to, basically since like opening day. He keeps that same routine. But him traveling with the team is definitely it was an interesting nugget to keep a lookout for. So we'll peep on it. We'll see what ends up happening with Miami. But Julius Randle doesn't tickle my fancy. I gotta say, doesn't get the gooses flowing as far as the move the Heat should make as far as what that shirt up power forward guy could be. I think it needs to be I think it needs to be more of like a rugged PJ Tucker type, like a guy who will get the offensive rebounds, that will bring that dog. I think the Heat have enough, especially that starting unit and that closing unit. I think that between Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, and then Kyle also being the point guard, like you're going to bring in another guy who really needs the ball in his hands to be the most effective. I think what you're doing a couple things there. One, I think you are taking the ball out of Bam's hands, which I think is stupid. You're taking the ball out of Jimmy's hands, which I think is not smart. And then if Tyler has one of those nights where he's just really hot and really has it going, like and we've already seen like Julius Randle thinks of himself as a star and will kind of make us think about it. I don't know if that's a match made in heaven for Miami.